they left for their own country by another road. The gospel writer tells us about the Magi, those wise men from the east who came to visit Jesus. They left by another road. Now you get the impression, at least I tend to when I hear this, that these Magi simply found a different path to get back to the same place from which they had come. Head on down to Route 6, you could have said, and you'll bypass Old Herod's headquarters in Concord on 44, and you'll still get back to Providence in about the same amount of time. But is that all that happens to these Magi? Simply a different highway, a different route number back to the old homestead? I wonder, because as the old saying goes, you can't go home again. There's in fact a novel by Thomas Wolfe that goes by that very title, You Cannot Go Home Again. You can't go home again. And in this novel, the protagonist, George Weber, wrestles with the radically changing landscape of life in that period between the First and Second World Wars. It was a period of huge change in the world, in culture, in society, in daily life. And not all those changes were happy ones, at least not for everyone. The disquiet, unease of that period of the 20s and the 30s echoes through so many of the great American writings and writers of that time, Steinbeck, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Hemingway. And this emotional upheaval is not uniquely American either. Any of you who watched that series Downton Abbey and you witnessed the upending of the customs and the conventions and more that happened during that period for our friends across the pond as well. You all know this. So anyway, as the storyline of that novel, You Can't Go Home Again, as that wraps up, the protagonist, George Weber, he finally reaches for himself the deep revelation that sort of overarches the whole thing. You can't go back home to your family, back home to your childhood, back home to a young man's dreams of glory and of fame, back home to places in the country, back home to the old forms and systems of things which once seemed everlasting, but which are changing all the time. Back home to the escapes of time and memory. For Weber, or I suppose for the author, Wolfe himself, the soul cannot go home again after his or her eyes have been opened by the bright lights and the dark shadows of a wider world, opened by the delight and the despair of expanding reality. You can't go home again. And that is precisely why I wonder whether the Magi, the wise men from the east, whether they could actually go home again. Indeed, they left for their own country by another road, it says, but perhaps that other road was a road to an entirely new home, as it were. You see, my friends, on this day we call Epiphany, a word which means revealing or revelation. On this day when we remember the story of the Magi coming to greet the Christ child, we do more than simply call up from backstage those other characters in the Christmas pageant that we didn't bring up front on Christmas Eve. On this day, we celebrate that God is at work opening the eyes of all to a brighter light, the light that shines in the darkness, a light reflected in the face of Jesus. In the story of the Magi, those seekers come from far away looking for the light. And when you find the kind of light that God shines out in Jesus,
cannot help but be changed. Now, there is so much in the story of the Magi coming to Jesus that competes for our attention. A bit of this I was just talking about with the young ones. They're the Magi themselves, as we've so often counted them as three, even though the Bible never says that. And we've so often imagined them to be kings, and it's very clear that they're not that. They're probably more like astrologers, maybe scholars. There is the star, which likewise in so many a Christmas pageant takes its starring role. Get it? Starring role. Sorry. And you were supposed to groan louder. Come on. And about which there are so many unanswered questions. I've been asked before if it's the star in the east, how did the Magi from the east follow it west? There's so many unanswered questions about the star. And then, of course, there are these gifts I was just talking about with the kids. This is one of the things I remember keying in on as a child, hearing the story. After all, the whole tradition of getting presents at Christmas comes at least in part, not all, but in part, in connection to the Magi giving their gifts. And besides that, these gifts are just so weird that they are so captivating and intriguing. At least I found them so as a child. The true gift, though, that is given in this encounter is not the collection of gold, frankincense, and myrrh the Magi give out. The true gift is their coming face to face with God made flesh in the world, with Christ, and with their own transformation that happens in the wake of that encounter. This is truly the unexpected gift that is exchanged in this story. Those who came to give gifts, namely the Magi, are themselves changed by the gift that they have received in the giving. And the journey of these transformed Magi, no longer able to go down the same roads that they traveled before, that part of their journey, that they went home by another road, that offers us a gift too. Because you see, my friends, and hear this, their journey of going home by another road, it stands before us as witness to the ability to reject playing by the rules of the world. It gives witness to us to the ability to resist kowtowing to the powers and principalities. You see, the powers that be of their time wanted them to be accomplices in the geopolitical games of their day. The powers that be wanted them to be collaborators, soothing anxieties and insecurities of a tirade-rating bully. To truly encounter Christ, though, opens and transforms you in ways that you cannot imagine. And so after such an encounter, if you have truly encountered, you have to reject the playbook of jealousy. You have to reject the screenplay of violence. You have to say no to what so many others around you are cheering on, even if they try to tell you about calculated risks and strategies of deterrence. You just cannot play that game to begin with. You cannot help but depart by another road. And quite frankly, you may not be able to go home again at all. And that's okay. As scary as that is, that itself is the gift. To be so transformed is itself blessing. There's an anonymous Franciscan blessing. It goes like this. May God bless you with discomfort and easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger and injustice, oppression and exploitation of people, so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and to turn their pain into joy. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in the world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done, to bring justice and kindness to all our children and the poor. Discomfort, anger, tears, foolishness. Indeed, that would be an unexpected gift and an unexpected blessing, at least by so many of the world standards. And yet it is exactly the sort of gift we need. It is exactly the sort of gift that the Christ child laid among us to offer. We do not sing about peace on earth one week, simply to turn our backs and turn toward the drones the next. So I don't worry too much about those magi. Sure, it can be disorienting to be forced down a different road. It could even seem like it would be a scary thing not to be able to return home again.
But you see, my friends, in their encounter with the Christ child, they came to find their true home.
Indeed, the story of the Magi helps us to remember that any seeker, whether by choice or by chance, can find his or her way to the manger. And in finding that way to the manger, they likewise find their place among the saints, and they find their home in the one who is the very source of all our being, the source of life itself. After all, the child in this story is the Savior who says that the last will be first, and the first will be last. And in the light of such a Savior, everyone has been invited to the party, changed though they will be. So, of course, that means you, too. You, too, have been invited. You, too, have been offered the opportunity to come to a manger, a place of eating, and find Christ in the flesh. So come, my friends, come this day, come to this table, come to this place where the star of God's love shines over the place where Jesus' body lay among us. Come to this feast where the first and the last are fed, the least and the most are fed, the kings and the paupers are fed. Come to this feast and come to Christ where you can feast in the presence of heaven itself. But be warned, my friends.
When you open yourself to truly meet Christ at the table
And in the world and alive among us, we might just very well have to leave by a different road.
blessing and honor, glory and power be unto God.